All right, so what I'd like to do is talk to you a little bit about the article that came out in the New York Times this week related to The Biggest Loser and the weight regain that people experienced following being contestants on that show. And I'd like to cover three different things that are related to that article, really to get at the point of is the purpose of losing weight, is it, essentially fruitless because everybody's going to be destined to regain that weight. And essentially, if you read that article, you might come to that conclusion. And a lot of people have been contacting us to ask us, well, does this mean that no matter what I do, I'm going to be regaining weight and I won't be able to control that? So why even try to lose weight? So let me talk about three specific things that I think are important that are alluded to in that article, but certainly are not fully explained, and might help put you at ease a little bit, or at least explain why those contestants experience some of the things that they experience. So first thing I want to talk about is metabolic adaptation. So metabolic adaptation is basically a way of saying when your body is subjected to a low-calorie environment, meaning you start cutting calories or not giving your body enough energy to match what you are expending on a regular basis, your brain senses that. It knows, I need 2,000 calories a day, but I'm only getting 1,200 calories a day. And so I've got to make some adjustments. And what it does is it starts to drop your metabolic rate in response to a lower calorie intake. And this is a normal biological response. Think about it as a way to survive if you're in a famine. We are genetically programmed to make sure that our bodies will survive long periods of time without as much food, because for much of our history as humans, that's how we had to survive. We didn't have drive-thrus, we didn't have grocery stores. We had to catch and grow all of our own food. And there were periods of time when we were less successful at doing that. So our brains are designed to sense we're not getting as much energy as we might need to do the things that we would do, and we drop our metabolic rate, or what we call our resting metabolic rate, RMR, that goes down in response to a lower calorie intake. And this is normal. And what we do when we try to induce weight loss is we try to stay ahead of that adaptation. And so we lower your calories sufficiently such that the decrease in metabolic rate is not sufficient to catch up with the change in metabolic rate, and that leads to weight loss. So the difference between the number of calories that you need and the number of calories that you take in leads to weight loss. And when you do that with just restricting food alone and keep your activity the same, that is one way to create what we call energy deficit. And that then leads to weight loss. Now, what happens when you add a very significant calorie restriction with a very large amount of physical activity, as in the case of the contestants with The Biggest Loser? Well, what you do is you really increase that energy deficit. And in that scenario, the Biggest Loser contestants are really working hard to try to lose as much weight as they can in as short a period of time as they can. So in 30 weeks, those contestants that were studied, they lost an average of 130 pounds. All right? That's a very large amount of weight to lose in a very short period of time. Even people who have surgical intervention don't typically lose that amount of weight in that period of time. So this is a very significant weight loss, extreme weight loss even, is what I would call it. And what you do in that scenario is you push the body to adapt even more. The body is responding. And so instead of going from in this kind of scenario, an 800 calorie energy deficit, right? So 2,000 minus the 1,200. What you are doing when you are increasing the physical activity at such a significant level, that 800 calorie energy deficit now goes to anywhere around 5,000 calories, just depending on the amount of exercise that they are doing and the amount of calories that they're taking in terms of food. So they are pushing the metabolic adaptation because the brain is sensing, not only am I not getting in enough, I'm also exercising at a very high volume. Which brings me to the second point. We are trying to create a situation where, of course, we know we're going to have some metabolic adaptation because we're subjecting you to a low-calorie environment, but it matters how you lose the weight and how you create that energy deficit so that you don't exacerbate the metabolic adaptation. So we want a balanced approach. And what that means is we want to match the physical activity to calorie intake over time. And typically what we are going to do is start out with a program where your calorie intake is lower at the beginning, and over time we're going to gradually increase your calorie intake because we are also expecting that your physical activity is going to gradually increase over time. And that allows for a better match. We're still going to get an energy deficit along the way, which leads to weight loss, but instead of having a huge energy deficit that pushes the metabolic adaptation, we are focused on a very moderate energy deficit that allows for consistent weight loss over a long period of time. That's the key. In Biggest Loser, what they are doing is they're pushing the metabolic adaptation because they're creating a significantly huge energy deficit by increasing physical activity to a significant point, especially well beyond what they're taking in. And that leads to the third point. What is sustainable? So if you create this significant energy deficit and you drive this metabolic adaptation, at the end of the day, you have a plan that is not sustainable. And when you read that article, the thing that you will notice most people are saying is, I can't manage to exercise for 9 hours a week. That's just practically impossible. And if that's the number that I need in order to maintain my weight loss, then sure, that's going to feel futile. But if you take a more balanced approach, where you say, I'm going to gradually increase my physical activity over time, be accepting of a couple of pounds a week of weight loss, such that I don't ever get to a point where I'm eating as little as I can and exercising as much as I possibly can, and I need to do that 100% of the time in order to maintain my weight loss, then you're going to be in a much better position. So a sustainable approach is going to focus on moderate energy deficit that is balanced, that does not drive metabolic adaptation, and that then leads to a longer term ability to maintain that weight loss. And part of that sustainability is continuing treatment. So one of the other big issues that the Biggest Loser contestants have is that they get disconnected from all of the things that were helping them be successful in the first place. The support, the ongoing dietary and physical activity counseling, the medical supervision. All of those things get disconnected once they leave as contestants. And if they did not put those things together in their real life, then it becomes really challenging. So we recommend, as an approach for successful long-term weight loss, is a way that does not drive significant over metabolic adaptation, balanced approach with gradually increasing physical activity, matched with increasing calories over time, and staying connected to your treatment team, because we know obesity is a chronic relapsing disorder. It's not that you're not going to regain some weight. Sure, everybody may regain a few pounds here or there, but you want to have support to be able to get back on track and stay with your plan so that you can be successful long term.